Shocking video shows 9-story building in China suddenly collapse.
A residential building under renovation collapsed.
An estimated 9 people were buried after 4 residential buildings collapsed.
China's rapid construction boom is a marvel of modern ambition. But even the mightiest cranes and cleverest engineers can stumble spectacularly. Hidden behind the gleaming facades and architectural wonders are tales of miscalculations, oversights, and the occasional collapse. Let's peel back the curtain on 15 of the most infamous construction mistakes that cost both money and lives. Number 15. Rana Plaza Collapse. The Rana Plaza collapse is a heartbreaking story that exposed the dark underside of the global fast fashion industry. Located in Savar, Bangladesh, Rana Plaza was an 8-story commercial building housing several garment factories, banks, and shops. On April 24, 2013, the building collapsed, resulting in the deaths of 1,134 people and injuring over 2,000. One of the deadliest garment factory disasters in history. What's staggering is that the tragedy was entirely preventable. The day before the collapse, workers noticed cracks in the walls and pillars. An engineer inspected the building and declared it unsafe. Shops and banks on the lower floors closed immediately, but the garment factories on the upper floors remained operational. The factory owners allegedly threatened to withhold a month's pay if workers didn't return. Under pressure, they went back the next morning. The building was never designed to support the heavy machinery used in garment production. Moreover, extra floors had been added illegally, further straining the structure. The combination of poor construction materials, shoddy building practices, and blatant disregard for safety standards created a ticking time bomb. When the building gave way, it pancaked floor by floor, trapping thousands of workers in the rubble. Rescue efforts spanned weeks, with harrowing stories of survivors being pulled from the debris. The disaster sparked outrage both locally and internationally, shedding light on the exploitative conditions in which many of our clothes are made. In the aftermath, there was a global call to action. Major retailers and fashion brands faced intense scrutiny over their supply chains. Agreements like the Accord on Fire and Building Safety in Bangladesh were established, aiming to improve safety conditions through inspections, training, and remediation. Number 14. Lotus Riverside Complex. The Lotus Riverside Complex in Shanghai was supposed to be a symbol of modern luxury living. Instead, it became an international embarrassment when one of its brand new buildings toppled over like a giant domino in 2009. Picture this: a 13-story apartment building lying on its side, mostly intact, as if someone gently pushed it over. It's as bizarre as it sounds. What went wrong? The collapse was entirely man-made. During construction, workers excavated soil for an underground parking garage while carelessly dumping the displaced soil near a riverbank adjacent to the building. Heavy rain, shortly before the incident, caused the riverbank to collapse, destabilizing the ground beneath the building's foundation. Essentially, the building's once solid base turned into mush, and gravity did the rest. Amazingly, the building didn't crumble into rubble, it simply fell. This speaks volumes about the workmanship of the structure itself, but also highlights the severe lack of planning below ground. The foundation wasn't properly reinforced to account for the soil's instability, and the rushed urban development ignored basic safety protocols. Nobody was living in the building at the time, so there were no casualties, but the visual spectacle of a fallen skyscraper sent shockwaves through the construction industry. The Lotus Riverside disaster became a symbol of Shanghai's breakneck urbanization and a stark warning about the dangers of cutting corners in construction. It also raised questions about oversight, as inspectors failed to catch the glaring issues during the building's development. Number 13. Aeon Center Marble Crisis. The Aeon Center in Chicago, originally called the Standard Oil Building, was supposed to be an architectural masterpiece when it was completed in 1973. Its sleek, modern design was wrapped in Italian Carrara marble, giving it a gleaming white, luxurious appearance that stood out in Chicago's skyline. Unfortunately, that marble turned out to be as fragile as it was beautiful. Within just a year, the marble facade began to crack, and not just small cracks. Entire panels, some weighing over 300 pounds, detached and plummeted to the ground. This wasn't just a cosmetic problem, it was a serious safety hazard for pedestrians below. The culprit? Chicago's extreme climate, with its sweltering summers and freezing winters. The marble couldn't handle the constant expansion and contraction caused by temperature fluctuations, and it began to fail spectacularly. Temporary fixes were attempted, but by the 1990s, it was clear drastic measures were needed. The entire building's marble cladding was replaced with granite, a sturdier material that could withstand Chicago's weather. The refacing project cost a staggering $80 million, which was more than half the building's original construction cost. Today, the Aeon Center stands as a reminder that even the most luxurious materials can lead to disastrous results if they don't fit their surroundings. It's an expensive lesson in the importance of balancing aesthetics with functionality. Sure, it looks great, but will it survive a Chicago winter? Number 12. Seongsu Bridge Collapse. The Seongsu Bridge collapse in Seoul, South Korea, is a chilling example of how neglect and poor maintenance can lead to disaster. Completed in 1979, the bridge was a vital link across the Han River, handling thousands of commuters daily. But on October 21, 1994, during a busy morning rush hour, a 48-meter section of the bridge suddenly gave way, sending vehicles and a passenger bus plunging into the river below. The collapse claimed 32 lives and injured 17 others, making it one of South Korea's most tragic infrastructure failures. Investigations revealed a shocking lack of oversight during the bridge's construction and maintenance. Critical welding points were poorly executed, and rusted pins, a sign of years of unchecked wear and tear, were found to have significantly weakened the structure. Essentially, the bridge had been deteriorating for years, but nobody took action to fix it. To make matters worse, the Seongsu Bridge was carrying double its intended traffic capacity by the 1990s. This strain, combined with the shoddy construction and lack of inspections, turned the bridge into a ticking time bomb. The tragedy led to a national reckoning in South Korea. The government introduced stricter construction regulations and launched a massive review of all existing infrastructure. Today, the Seongsu Bridge stands rebuilt, but the memory of the collapse remains a powerful reminder of the importance of regular maintenance and safety checks. Number 11. Sampoong Department Store Collapse. The Sampoong Department Store collapse in Seoul, South Korea, is one of the deadliest building collapses in modern history. Opened in 1989, the luxury shopping center was a symbol of South Korea's booming economy. But just 6 years later, on June 29, 1995, the entire structure collapsed, killing 502 people and injuring nearly 1,000 more. How does something like this happen? It started during construction. Originally planned as an office building, the design was changed midway to accommodate a 5-story department store. To make room for escalators, workers removed support columns, severely weakening the building's structure. Adding insult to injury, a heavy air conditioning unit was placed on the roof, exerting more pressure on the already compromised foundation. The warning signs were there. Cracks began appearing in the walls months before the collapse, and on the day of the disaster, loud noises were heard from the ceiling. Yet the building owners ignored these red flags, refusing to evacuate the shoppers and workers inside. When the collapse happened, it was catastrophic. The entire structure came down in seconds, leaving behind a mountain of rubble. Rescue efforts lasted for days, but the scale of the disaster was overwhelming. Number 10. Hyatt Regency Walkway Collapse. The Hyatt Regency Walkway collapse is a grim chapter in engineering history that unfolded in Kansas City, Missouri. Back in 1981, the Hyatt Regency Hotel was the place to be, a symbol of modern architecture with its impressive atrium featuring suspended walkways hovering above the lobby. These walkways were not just functional, they were the hotel's jaw-dropping centerpiece. On the fateful evening of July 17, 1981, the hotel was buzzing with energy. A massive crowd had gathered in the atrium for a dance competition, enjoying the live music and lively atmosphere. Little did they know, tragedy was looming overhead. Suddenly, without warning, the 4th-floor walkway collapsed onto the 2nd-floor walkway, and both crashed into the crowded lobby below. The aftermath was horrifying. 114 people lost their lives, and over 200 were injured. It was one of the deadliest structural collapses in U.S. history. So what went wrong? It all boiled down to a fatal flaw in engineering and a critical change in the design during construction. Originally, the walkways were supposed to be suspended from the ceiling by continuous steel rods threading through both walkways. However, to make construction easier, the design was altered to use separate rods for each walkway. This change effectively doubled the load on the connection points holding up the 4th-floor walkway. Unfortunately, this critical modification wasn't properly reviewed or calculated. The connections couldn't handle the extra weight, especially with dozens of people standing on the walkways that night. The bolts gave out, and gravity did the rest. The collapse led to significant changes in engineering ethics and practices, emphasizing the importance of thorough design review and communication among architects, engineers, and contractors. Number 9. Teton Dam Disaster. The Teton Dam disaster is a dramatic tale of nature's power meeting human error in eastern Idaho. Picture this. It's the mid-1970s, and the Bureau of Reclamation is eager to showcase its latest project, the Teton Dam, a colossal structure meant to tame the Teton River, provide irrigation, and control floods. Sounds like a win-win, right? Fast forward to June 5, 1976. The reservoir behind the dam is filling up for the first time. Locals are excited, engineers are proud, but Mother Nature has other plans. Early that morning, small leaks, little trickles of water, start appearing on the downstream face of the dam. Engineers notice, but think it's normal seepage. Spoiler alert, it wasn't. By midday, those minor leaks turned into raging torrents. Efforts to plug the holes with sandbags and bulldozers were like trying to stop a tsunami with a bucket. At 11:57 a.m., the dam gave way catastrophically. A monstrous wall of water, 80 billion gallons, roared downstream, engulfing everything in its path. The devastation was immense. Farms, homes, and businesses were obliterated. Miraculously, due to quick evacuations, only 11 lives were lost, but the financial toll was staggering. Over $2 billion in damages. The fertile Snake River Plain looked like a war zone. So, what went wrong? Investigations revealed that the dam was built on unstable ground composed of fractured volcanic rock and soil, prone to erosion. The design didn't adequately address seepage control, and quality control during construction was lax. In essence, the dam had foundational issues, literally. Number 8. Walkie-talkie building. The walkie-talkie building. London's architectural marvel turned accidental supervillain. Officially named 20 Fenchurch Street, this skyscraper earned its nickname because, well, it looks like a giant walkie-talkie. Designed by renowned architect Raphael Vignoli, the building was completed in 2014 and immediately stood out in London's skyline with its unique, curvy design. But soon after its debut, something strange and a bit comical started happening. Drivers parked near the building returned to find parts of their cars melted. A man's Jaguar had warped panels and a liquefied side mirror. What was going on?
Fried an egg here on the streets of London. He's just putting that in there for his story. It is so hot.
Turns out, the building's concave glass facade was focusing sunlight into a scorching beam, an intense hotspot on the streets below.
It got up to 92.6 degrees.
That's Celsius.
That's Celsius, so that's how hot.
This solar death ray was no joke. At certain times of the day, temperatures on the targeted spots, the heat was strong enough to fry eggs, burn doormats, and even blister paint on nearby shops. Londoners, with their characteristic humor, dubbed it the fry scraper. The unintended consequence was a result of the building's shape and glass curvature acting like a colossal magnifying glass. Vignoli had encountered a similar problem with another building in Las Vegas, but didn't anticipate London's milder sun causing such issues. To fix the problem, developers installed permanent sunshades, aluminum fins, on the building's south-facing facade to disrupt the intense reflections. The solution worked, and the walkie-talkie no longer zaps the streets with solar lasers. Number 7. Leaning Tower of Pisa. The Leaning Tower of Pisa, an accidental masterpiece, and perhaps the most famous architectural blunder that turned into a beloved icon. Located in the Italian city of Pisa, this bell tower began its life in 1173 as part of the city's cathedral complex. The plan was straightforward: build a towering symbol of their prosperity. What could possibly go wrong? Well, by the time workers reached the third story, the tower began to lean. The culprit? Shifty, unstable subsoil composed of clay, fine sand, and shells. The foundation, only about 10 feet deep, wasn't sufficient for a structure of that size on such ground. Construction halted several times over the next century due to wars, and perhaps fortuitously, this allowed the soil to settle, preventing an early collapse. As builders added more floors, they tried to correct the tilt by making one side taller than the other. So the tower is actually slightly curved. By the time it was completed in the 14th century, the lean was prominent, and the tower stood at about 183 feet high on the low side and 186 feet on the high side. Over the centuries, the tilt increased at a rate of about 0.05 inches per year, causing concern about a potential collapse. Various restoration efforts were made, But it wasn't until the late 20th century that significant engineering feats managed to stabilize the tower. By 2001, engineers reduced the lean by 17 inches, and the tower was declared stable for at least another 200 years. Number 6. Vasa Shipwreck. The Vasa Shipwreck is one of the most infamous naval disasters in history, and it never even made it out to sea. The Vasa was a Swedish warship commissioned by King Gustavus Adolphus in the early 17th century. It was meant to showcase Sweden's naval dominance, complete with ornate carvings, 2 gun decks, and 64 large cannons. It was a floating palace of destruction, or at least it was supposed to be. On August 10, 1628, with crowds gathered to witness its maiden voyage, the Vasa made it exactly 300 meters, less than a mile, from the dock before disaster struck. A gust of wind caused the top-heavy ship to lean alarmingly, and within minutes, it tipped over and sank to the bottom of Stockholm's harbor. Talk about a short-lived career. The design flaw? The Vasa was ridiculously top-heavy. Too much weight was packed into the upper decks, those cannons and the decorative carvings, and there wasn't enough ballast in the lower hull to keep the ship stable. The builders knew the ship was unstable during construction, but were too afraid to challenge the king's ambitious demands. After all, who wants to tell the king his dream warship is a literal sinking ship? The aftermath was embarrassing for Sweden, but the story didn't end there. For over 300 years, the Vasa rested in the harbor until it was rediscovered and salvaged in 1961. Miraculously, the cold, brackish water had preserved the ship remarkably well. Today, the Vasa is housed in a museum in Stockholm, where visitors can marvel at the grandeur and folly of this engineering mishap. Number 5. Aquadome Aquarium Burst. Imagine waking up in Berlin to find that one of the city's most iconic attractions has turned the streets into an impromptu aquatic park. That's precisely what happened when the Aquadome Aquarium burst in December 2022. The Aquadome was no ordinary fish tank. It was the world's largest cylindrical aquarium, standing at an impressive 82 feet tall and housed inside the Radisson Blu Hotel. This marvel of engineering allowed guests to ride a glass elevator through the center, surrounded by 1,500 tropical fish in 1 million liters of seawater. It was like scuba diving without getting wet. That is, until the tank decided to call it quits in the most dramatic fashion. In the early morning hours, the massive acrylic tank suddenly ruptured. A torrent of water, enough to fill several Olympic-sized swimming pools, gushed into the hotel's lobby and out onto the streets.
The hotel actually shook inside. I could describe it as a poof.
The force was so immense, it even caused structural damage to the building. Sadly, the majority of the fish didn't survive the unexpected trip to freedom. Over time, the acrylic material of the tank likely developed microfractures, tiny cracks that can expand under stress. Factors like temperature fluctuations in Berlin's chilly winters and the sheer weight of the water put immense pressure on the tank's walls. It was a ticking time bomb, and when it went off, it certainly made a splash. The aftermath was a soggy mess. Emergency services evacuated guests, and cleanup crews worked tirelessly to drain the flooded areas. The incident sparked discussions about the safety of large-scale aquariums and the importance of regular maintenance checks. Number 4. Hard Rock Hotel Collapse. The heart of New Orleans is known for its lively music, rich history, and vibrant architecture. But in October 2019, it became the backdrop for a construction disaster when the Hard Rock Hotel collapse turned a bustling street into a scene of chaos. The hotel was under construction on the edge of the historic French Quarter, set to be a gleaming addition to the city's skyline. On the morning of October 12th, workers and passers-by were startled by a series of loud cracks. Before anyone could react, the upper floors began to cave in, and within moments, a significant portion of the structure had collapsed onto the street below. 3 workers lost their lives, and dozens were injured. The collapse hurled debris across multiple blocks, crushed cars, and forced the evacuation of nearby buildings. The iconic Canal Street, usually teeming with tourists and streetcars, was left covered in dust and rubble. Investigations pointed to severe structural deficiencies. Reports suggested that to cut costs, builders substituted thinner support beams than what was specified by the engineers. This compromise severely weakened the building's integrity. Additionally, there were concerns about rushed construction schedules and inadequate supervision. Workers had reportedly voiced safety concerns prior to the incident, noticing sagging floors and improperly installed supports. Unfortunately, these warnings weren't heeded in time. The combination of compromised materials and overlooked safety protocols set the stage for disaster. The aftermath was complicated, to say the least. The unstable remains of the building posed a significant risk, delaying recovery efforts and necessitating a complex demolition plan that took months to execute. The collapse also led to legal battles, with numerous lawsuits filed against the developers and contractors. Number 3. Sydney Opera House construction issues. When you think of Sydney, the first image that probably comes to mind is the stunning Sydney Opera House, with its sail-like structures gleaming against the harbour. But behind this architectural gem lies a story of ambition, controversy, and a fair share of headaches. Back in 1957, Danish architect Jørgen Utzon won an international competition with his bold and innovative design for the Opera House. The plan was revolutionary, but also somewhat of an engineer's nightmare. Construction began in 1959 with an initial budget of $7 million AUD and an expected completion time of 4 years. Spoiler alert, they were a bit off. From the get-go, the unique design presented massive engineering challenges, particularly the construction of the iconic shell roofs. The geometry was so complex that engineers had to develop new techniques and materials on the fly. As a result, delays piled up and costs spiraled astronomically. By 1966, with no end in sight and costs soaring over $100 million AUD, political pressure mounted. Frustrated by constant interference and criticism, Utzon resigned from the project and left Australia. He would never return to see his masterpiece completed. Local architects took over, but they made significant changes, especially to the interiors. The main concert hall and opera theatre ended up with compromised acoustics due to design alterations and budget constraints. When the Opera House finally opened in 1973, 10 years late, it was both celebrated for its breathtaking exterior and criticized for its functional shortcomings. Over the years, numerous renovations have tried to address the acoustic and structural issues, costing additional millions. Despite these challenges, the Sydney Opera House has become a UNESCO World Heritage Site and a symbol of both the city's modern identity and human creativity. Number 2. Champlain Towers, South Collapse. In the early hours of June the 24th, 2021, the quiet community of Surfside, Florida, was jolted awake by a disaster that that would make headlines worldwide. The Champlain Towers South, a 12-story beachfront condominium, suddenly partially collapsed, leaving a tragic scene of devastation. Built in 1981, Champlain Towers South was a staple of coastal living, offering residents stunning ocean views and a slice of the Florida dream. But beneath its sun-soaked exterior, serious structural problems were lurking. Years before the collapse, reports and inspections had flagged issues like cracking in the concrete, water intrusion, and corroded reinforcing steel. Despite these red flags, necessary repairs were delayed, often due to disputes over the high costs, estimated at over $9 million. The building was in the midst of its 40-year recertification process, a requirement in Miami-Dade County to ensure structural and electrical safety. At approximately 1:22 a.m., without much warning, a significant portion of the building crumbled to the ground. 98 people lost their lives in the disaster, making it one of the deadliest unintended building collapses in U.S. history. The event sent shockwaves through the nation, raising pressing questions about building safety and regulatory oversight. Investigations suggested that the tower's pool deck had a major design flaw. It was flat instead of sloped, preventing proper water drainage. This allowed water to seep into the concrete slab below, leading to gradual deterioration over decades. Additionally, the building's proximity to the ocean meant exposure to salty air, accelerating corrosion. The collapse prompted an urgent review of building safety codes and inspection procedures, not just in Florida, but across the country. Nearby buildings underwent inspections, and in some cases, evacuations were ordered. Lawsuits were filed and settlements reached, but for the families affected, no compensation could fill the void left by the tragedy. Number 1. Tacoma Narrows Bridge Collapse. When it comes to famous engineering failures, the Tacoma Narrows Bridge collapse takes the cake, or perhaps the plunge. Opened in July 1940 in Washington state, the bridge was a modern marvel, the third longest suspension bridge in the world, gracefully spanning the Puget Sound. Locals affectionately nicknamed it Galloping Gertie due to its tendency to sway and undulate in the wind. But the galloping was more than just a quirky characteristic. It was a harbinger of doom. On November 7, 1940, just 4 months after its grand opening, winds hitting a modest 40 miles per hour set the bridge into violent oscillations. The roadway twisted and bucked like a wild bronco, with waves rippling along its length. Witnesses watched in awe and terror as the suspension cables snapped one by one. In a dramatic finale captured on film, the center span broke free and crashed into the churning waters below. Miraculously, there was only one casualty, a cocker spaniel named Tubby, whose owner couldn't coax him out of the car stuck on the swaying bridge. So, what caused this architectural icon to meet such an untimely end? The designers had prioritized cost savings and aesthetics over aerodynamics. The bridge's narrow, solid girders and lack of wind vents turned it into a giant airfoil. Instead of allowing wind to pass through, the bridge caught it like a sail, leading to destructive resonance. At the time, the science of aerodynamics in bridge design was not well understood. The catastrophe served as a wake-up call, spurring extensive research into wind effects on large structures. The collapse became a foundational case study in engineering schools worldwide. A new, more stable Tacoma Narrows Bridge was eventually built, incorporating lessons learned from Gertie's demise. Today, the site stands as both a transportation link and a testament to human ingenuity born from failure. The Tacoma Narrows Bridge collapse is more than a historical footnote. It's a story about respecting the forces of nature and the continuous pursuit of engineering excellence, even when it means learning the hard way. Thanks for watching another episode. While you are still here, make sure to click the video on your screen for more quality content.